now we need to understand how, when we access these files, how these data structures and metadata information get accessed. So before we do to understand this, one more thing we need to see how this layout happens. So let us say we are using multi-level indexing, which is used in modern OS. Then we have to see how we have to first also have a mental picture of the layout. So let us first try to see that using a very simple file system, which is not a real file system, but it is almost similar to the real file system that Unix or Linux systems have. So it will give you a good idea. So again, taking our simple tiny disk, we have a 64 block disk, and each block is, let us say, 4 kilobyte. So numbering from 0 to 63. Okay, so majority of our disks will be reserved as a data blocks. So in this case, for example, we leaving first 8 blocks, the remaining from 8 to 63, all of them are basically reserved as data blocks. That means these blocks will store the actual content of the file. So actual data of the files will be stored in these blocks. Okay, and then along with the data blocks, we need to store these inodes also for each file. So some of the blocks will be reserved for storing the inodes. And in this case, for this tiny disk, let us say we store these five disk blocks for explicitly for storing the inodes. So that means your inode table, this will be storing your inode table. So why inode table, I'll explain. Because so these are going to contiguously store multiple inode informations in these 5 disk blocks. So one block, for example, we have said one block is 4 kilobyte, one disk block is 4 kilobyte, and normally each inode is typically from 128 bytes to 256 bytes, because we'll see each inode has to store those data pointers or the pointers to the next blocks, as well as it has to store some other metadata informations about each file, like when it was created, what file type it is, who are the user permissions, and all those things. So normally in most of the Linux system, they use 256 bytes for each inode. So in 4 kilobyte disk block, you can have 16 inodes. If you divide 4 kilobyte by 256 bytes, that means you can store 16 inodes in each block, isn't it? So for if you are using 5 disk blocks, you can store 5 into 16 inodes. So 5 into 16 inodes. So that means and they will be numbered from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So first data block will have inodes from 0 to 15. Second will have from 16 to, I think, 31. And then the next the next data block will have from 32 to and so on. So in this way, you can have many inodes. And as I said, each inode will save all these information: read, write permission, size, number of blocks, time it was accessed, time it was created, number of reference counts for each file, and so on. And finally, this index information for the data blocks. Okay, and as we said, each inode may be storing data blocks, maybe having indexes. For the data blocks can be anywhere in that we have already discussed. We are doing an index allocation for precisely for this reason, so that we can store file at any random locations. So your data blocks can be at any random locations. The pointers of those or the addresses of those will be stored in the inodes in this inode data block. Of course, this already we have discussed. So with single level, we can have only max file size will be small. So to get larger files, we have already discussed. If you have direct data pointers, your file size will be limited. But you can have indirect one level of indirections. And to optimize, we have first few are reserved for direct data blocks, and last ones are reserved for indirections. So this is the same thing that we already discussed, so I did not remove it. So right now, don't worry about these three things. We'll talk about that. So this is just a close-up view of those inode blocks, inode 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So those 5 data blocks which were reserved for inodes. We are now having a close-up view. So as we saw that there can be 16 inodes per block. So first block will have from 0 to 15, then from 16 to 31, then 32 to 47, and so on. And so now this can be seen like a table. So now you have an inode table, and the inode number, basically the inode number that we saw, which is basically the low level file name that the OS uses to identify a file. So in the previous class we talked about that every file has a low level file name, which is basically called an inode number, by which OS keeps tracks of it. So the actual name, human readable name, is meant for user. Basically the OS tracks a file by its inode number, and that inode number is basically these numbers, this indexing into this table. So the earlier tables, the initial tables, will be meant for root directory and other basic files which are important for the file system. And for the user level files, they will start numbers from somewhere later. So, and it is very easy for the file system to calculate the offset for a particular inode. So let us say you want to read inode with number 4. And you know your inode table is starting from 12 kilobytes because it is the first, second, third, fourth block from starting from 0. So you know the starting address of the inode table, and you know each inode is 25 to 56 bytes, and you want to know the disk address of inode with number 4. And you can use simply, if you want to calculate the block number, you simply multiply inode number by the size of each inode divided by the block size. So we have not left with a lot of time. I wanted to just cover one more thing. So I'll take the question after that. Directory structure, as I said, is again also just a special type of file. And just like every file has a inode block and a data block. So similarly, directory will also have an inode block and a data block. Inode block will be storing the metadata information, and the data blocks will be storing the actual content. So in the case of directory, we see directory basically stores just the entries, just the mapping information. And large directories will use multiple data blocks. So those entries will be stored in the data blocks. And how do you distinguish whether it is a directory block or it is a data block? There is some bit in the inode which will distinguish whether it is a directory inode or it is a file inode. And how you store those entries, you have a simple list, or you can have some complex hash table, B trees, etc. to store the entries. That depends on the efficiency that you want, but the entries can be stored in any way. Anyhow, that is not so important for us for today's discussion. So now if you have understood how inodes are layout and how data blocks are laid out, now if you see, there are still some blocks that we have left. So although you have reserved, okay, these blocks are meant for inodes and these blocks are meant from 8 to 16 for data blocks. Now some of them may be free, some of them may be used, some of them may have been already allocated. So you have to have some kind of a free space management. And this free space management will be very easy for us now because we are using fixed size data blocks and all that. Indexing information is already there. So one of the very simplest method can be just to have a simple bitmap. Simple bitmap means basically you have every bit in this. So you will reserve one block for storing the information about inodes, and one block for storing about data blocks. And each bit on these blocks will correspond to one particular inode. And if that bit can be either 0 and 1. So 0 implying free, 1 implying already allocated. Of course, in this case, we have a very tiny block. So we have only few data blocks and few inodes. So you may wonder, and allocating entire one block, disk block for the bitmap may be an overkill thing. But in real life, the number of data blocks and inodes will be very huge. So having one or more data blocks for being reserved for a bitmap will make sense. But the idea is here, if you will have simple bitmaps, basically means you will have simple bits which will indicate whether my pen is not working. So basically it will indicate whether which one is free, which one is not free, and so on. So that particular bit will tell that that particular inode is, if it is 0, that means it is free. If it is 1, it is means allocated. Similarly for data block. And one last block, which is the first block, is called super block, which is reserved, because this super blocks is going to store the basic configuration of the file system layout that we have decided. So that means how many data blocks starting from which location, how many inode blocks, and what is the block size, and how many bitmap, and so on. So all this data layout information will be stored in this super block. So when the system boots up, when the operating system boots up for a particular partition, each partition will have this kind of a layout. And so first of all, it will fetch the super block in order to know the file system layout, in order to know the master plan, and then accordingly it will basically get the information about the file system. So your entire disk may have multiple partitions. Each partitions will have this kind of a layout. There will be a super block. In fact, beyond that, there is a boot block also, which basically stores some information about the booting of that system, if an OS is residing in that, and so on. And next block will be free space management related. Next few blocks will be index nodes, and the last few blocks will be the data content for the files and directories. So in this way, your entire disk will be carved up by your file system. So this was your layout and organizations and different strategies. It was little quick, I understand. Probably you may not have understood everything, but doesn't matter. I'll be sharing this file and these PPTs, and if anybody needs any other any elaboration on anything, we can have a doubts session later on. But I think the concepts are not difficult if you read from yourself from the book, or go through the slides. It will be very easy. Only 10-15 minutes discussion is remaining. I'll give a short break for 5 minutes, where we'll be talking about access methods, basically. How these operations, when we do write, read, open, close, then based on the layout that we have arrived at, how these operations will work, how the files will be accessed, what particular data structures will be accessed, and in what order. I and D are indicating. I is this ith, this one which indicates I is basically meant for indicating which, this bitmap is for the inode. This is inode bitmap, and this D is basically data bitmap, data block. So inode block bitmap, and this is data block bitmap. So means here all the bits in this data block will map to these data blocks, actual data blocks, and will determine, depending on whether there is 0 and 1 there, you will directly know whether that is free or allocated. So free space management is very easy here. You just have to look into the bitmap. Because some of the inodes, maybe because whenever you create a file, you have to allocate an inode block or inode in one of the inode blocks, and then you have to also allocate some blocks in your data blocks. So you have to first look into this bitmap to see which ones are free, and then accordingly allocate the space for the inode and the data blocks. I think this is literally not so difficult part now that we have covered the difficult part now. So this can be discussed easily. As we have seen, our file system provides these API, these system calls, and these system calls in turn operate upon files. So they will be accessing your data structures in some order. And that is what we want to see now to get some clarity. So let us say you want to create a file bar in this path slash, which is your root directory. So this slash is your root directory, and then within that there is a foo directory, and then within that you want to create a file, let us say with the name bar. Okay, so to create this, we may have to, so till now we have seen that that means for each, for foo directory, for root directory, there will be an inode and there will be a data block for root directory and as well as the foo directory. And for bar also, since we are just creating it, we'll just use we'll just have to use the inode for the bar. Till now, for when we have to write on the data, then we'll have to use the bar data also. But right now we don't need that. And also we may have to use the data bitmap and inode bitmap in order to see whether there is a, because we have to create a file, we'll have to see the availability of the file, the space in the from the bitmap. So we may have to read or write into these bitmaps. So now we'll try to understand which of these bitmap or data, which of these inode or data blocks or bitmap blocks needs to be read and written, and in which order, in order to do this simple operation of creating a file bar within foo directory, which is within root directory. So is the question clear? So what do you think, which is the first block out of these which needs to be read in order to do this create operation? Data bitmap, okay. Why do you think so? So you, because it is creation, so you are, I think, you want to first see whether there is a space available. But yeah, before that, I think you need to first of all see whether it's a valid path name or not. So before even you see whether there is a space availability and on that, you have to first verify whether it is a valid path and you have the permissions inside that or not. So first of all, you need to traverse this path. So first of all, you need to read the root inode. And why read root inode? Because you cannot root the data of the root directory. You cannot read the data of the root directory before reading the inode, because inode has the location of the data. So before you can even read the data of the root, you have to first read the inode of the root, because inode of the root has the pointers or the locations of the data blocks of the root. So first you have to read the root inode, then you'll have to read the root data. Because why you have to read the root data? Because root is a directory basically which will have to have information of whether foo is there or not. So you have to read that. After that, what?
Foo inode.
Yeah, so then we'll have to read foo inode, and then we'll have to read the foo data, because we need to see within foo directory, we'll have to basically, we have to see whether there is already a file with this name or not. We are trying to create this file, there may be already a file with this name, so we have to see the foo directory listing also. So we have to see the foo data, and then after that,
Inode bitmap.
yes, then we have to read inode bitmap. So why do you say so? Why do you think so we have to read inode bitmap?
We have to see whether an inode is free or not, like to create bar.
Correct. So because we are trying to create this file, we have to first create its inode, And to create an inode, we have to look into the bitmap whether there is a free inode block or not. Then only we can create it. So we need to read it, and most probably it will be available because you will be using a very large enough space. So then you have to update it, because now you're going to allocate one of the inode space, one of the inodes to the new file. So you'll have to you have to make it from 0 to 1. So you'll have to write that bitmap, and then you will have to update the foo data. So you will create that inode you use that inode that you have used by seeing to the bitmap, and now that file bar has to be there in the foo directory. So the foo directory listing has to be updated. So foo data will be written, and then finally you will do.
Sir, before inode bitmap write, don't we have to check data bitmap also?
Why? Because here we are just creating a file.
Because
So
if there is no data available in foo, like if there is no space available in foo, then what will happen?
no, within foo does not matter, because as I said, our arrangement is such that, let me show you the layout. Our arrangement is that there is no as such I think my system is hanging because of charging. So now an inode can use any of the data anywhere in the disk. So as long as there is any data block free in the entire disk, a directory can have a data block from anywhere in the disk. And since you are only creating a file, you're not going to do a write operation as such. So till you do any write, the size file shows 0. So there is no need to assign a data block to it. Only when you do a write on that file, then you have to assign a data block. So data bitmap need not to be consulted in this case unless you are doing a write operation also. You are writing something onto it. And there is no as such limit on the foo directory. Foo directory can have. Also, you want to say the food. Do you have anything else in the mind? I don't know whether you have something else in the mind when you
So
ask
I'm
this.
not getting the usage of data bitmap then. Isn't bitmap for the foo file, right? Foo folder, sorry. For the foo folder, we are using the data bitmap to see whether a particular block is free or not to allocate somewhere, right?
Have you understood why we have consulted the inode bitmap?
Yes, yes.
That you have consulted. Okay.
Mm.
Now we are not going to. So foo has already a data block already assigned earlier before this, because foo is already existing. There is a data block already for this. So for foo, we don't have to assign any data block. Yeah, in case if let us say foo, the data block that was assigned to the foo directory was already basically exhausted, means probably the directory listing was, so the foo directory was such a big huge directory probably that it has so many files that probably its entire data block for that was assigned to the foo. If that was already exhausted and we have to grow you have to probably grow that foo directory, then in that case the data bitmap may have to be consulted in order to assign one more data block to the foo directory. So in that case
Yeah,
that
yeah,
would have
that
been,
was my question. Yeah.
yeah, so in that case it would have been needed, but because considering our this we are of course, so that is a very extreme case, because we know especially in this kind of arrangement where we are dealing with very low number of data blocks, we are not going to exhaust our we can if we allocate 2 kilobytes to a data block, that 2 kilobytes can have so many entries. So we are not worried about right now exhausting the data block of the directory itself in storing the entries. Yeah, but if that happens, then we'll have to do that. So I think we are considering a more realistic scenario rather than that extreme scenario. If that was there, then definitely would have. If we have to grow the foo directory data itself, then we'll have to consult the data bitmap. So I think this example is taken from the book. I think probably they may have specified the assumption there that assume that probably the directory is not, there is sufficient space in the directory to, in the sense in the directory data block to add more listings. So I think, yeah, your question, I think your thought was okay, but this example is from the book, so probably that assumption is already taken. Okay, then after this writing the foo data, because you have added the listing, this shows that you have to read the bar inode, and then of course you'll have to write it. So why this? So you have to fetch that inode, which you have new inode that you allocated for the bar file, and you have to now you have to basically store information about that new file. So you have to update that inode with the new file that you're creating. So you'll have to fetch it, and then you have to write it with the updated information about the bar, when it is created, when it is, and what is its permission, who created it, and all that. So I hope the sequence of the accessing of your data structures for this create operation is clear. So if that is clear, so one thing I can observe, even just for creating a file, how many disk reads needs to be done. If you see, so these inodes data and this, probably they may be most of them, probably it may happen they may be in one single data block, but still multiple disk IOs may have to be done, even just for a very simple operation of creating a file. One more thing here. After this bar inode, there is a write operation in the foo inode also. Why so? The foo directories inode also needs to be updated. Why? This was understood because the new listing has to be added into the foo directory. So that has to be written definitely. Why its inode should be updated? Because the simple reason, because we also storing the information when it has been last modified, last accessed, and so on. So this directory has been last modified just now. So probably that change for updating that information keeps track of all node has to be updated with that. So that's a write operation here. And of course, if as per Varun's observation, if the foo was already exhausted and a new data bitmap, a new data block has to be reserved for the foo directory, then in that case also this write may have been needed. But this write is only considering we have to just update the access information. This foo directory was last accessed and modified at this point of time, so that updation is done by this write operation. So that means a lot of work is being done underlying by the file system, even when you are clicking a directory or when you are updating creating a new file. Do we allocate any data block while creating file? While creating a file is not, we don't allocate a data block to the file. When we do a write operation, then we allocate. So that's why there is no data block has been given to the bar file in this case. But as Varun observation was there, in case that extreme situation was happened, if a directory became too big and probably its entire data block was exhausted in storing the list, and we need to expand that, then in case we may have to allocate a data block. But that extreme situation does not happen. So frequently, because so that's why that is not discussed in this one. So now let us see if you have to open this bar once you have created it. So assume you have created it, and now you want to open this file that you have recently created. So now in what order these blocks will be accessed or read or written? So you are opening it still, so still you have not got the file descriptor. So you'll have to again traverse this path. So if you have to traverse, you have to first access the root inode, then root data, then foo inode, and then foo data, and then bar inode. And that will have all the information about the permissions and everything. And if the OS is satisfied, and it will open the file and create a file descriptor and return the file descriptor to the process. So in this case, you are only accessing these things. You don't access the bar data till now because you are just opening it and you're not creating anything. So there is no access to the bitmap. So this is easy. This is simpler, this open operation. But let us say you have to write to this bar, assuming now file exists and has been already been opened. You have a file descriptor now with you. So you'll be using a write operation with this file descriptor. So now which of them will be accessed in which order?
Inode bitmap.
First one. Before that, we can access the bar inode which is already been created because it is already existing and opened. So we need to first read this, and then from there basically get the file size. So inode will tell the current file size and all that, and whether there is a free space available and all that. And if it calculates that there is a need to create a new to expand grow the file, then it will read the bitmap. So probably currently, let us say we have just opened it and we have not written anything, so there will be no data block allocated to that. So that it will information he will know from the inode of the bar. So then he will consult the data bitmap to see which one of the block it can allocate, and it will update it after allocating one. After choosing one data block, it will modify it, and then that data block of the bar will be written with the content, and then you'll have to update all the things. So you have to update inode with the last modified and all those informations and the new size of the file. Sorry. Yes. Okay, so I think that is it. So here you are not modifying the foo inode because you have just modified the file, probably not the directory here. So they are not modifying the directory information. If you are just reading it, reading again, you have to read the inode, you have to read the data, and you may have to update the write because you have last accessed it recently. So you have to update that inode, and that's it. And for closing, you don't have to do any of these things. Nothing you have to do on the disk. Closing basically means you have to remove the file descriptor. So which is there in your system file table and this process descriptor table. So all those things are in your memory. You have to remove it from there. Nothing to do on the disk. So these are the things that I hope you have understood how these basic IO operations are happening. And if you see, there are many IOs, there are many read writes happening even for very basic operations like opening, creating, and writing. Especially read and closing are significantly less expensive. So one thing the file system does, it uses buffer cache, either in the disk itself, or it uses memory as a cache for the disk. As a cache for disk. So most of the things, so whenever you are doing a one read, you will not be just reading one sector, you will be reading an entire block, or you may be reading multiple blocks of that, and that will be buffered. And if the data is sequentially laid out or in a contiguous layout, then most of the time you will be able to get it from your memory itself or from the cache. And again, some kind of LRU policy you will have to use to ensure that you have, most of the time you have hit performance, you have a hit rather than a miss. And if the cache becomes full, you'll have to evict some things. All those similar things have to be there. So all the reads and write requests that file system issues, it first directs through the buffer cache. So once you have this buffer cache, you will be basically, before directing it to the disk itself, it will be routed through the buffer cache. So if it founds in the buffer cache, it is well and good. Otherwise, it will have to do the just like page swap page service thing that you have to do in when we are using a page virtual memory, swap space in a disk, something similar. Same thing. So if it is found, no disk IO. If it is missed, then block has to fetch from the disk to cache. So all the similar techniques will be used to make it more efficient. And especially for writing, the buffering is very important. Writes are not immediately written to the disk. It is first written into the cache block. And if you do read write directly, it is called write through, that we have already discussed earlier. But most of the time it is done write back method, basically, where cache stores the modified block in memory and then writes back after some delay. So maybe within 30 seconds or within few seconds, at some future point of time, it guarantees that the data will be put on the disk. And this thing is done because for many reasons. We have already discussed some reasons earlier. Because we can have better scheduling of IO request, and sometimes there are overwritten, so you write something and then you overwrite it and something. So in order to basically reduce those things, I know sometimes a file you may have created, but you may delete it immediately after sometimes. So then you don't have to update those right things. So some things that can happen within the cache itself will improve. So we have to minimize the number of disk IOs by that. And also many times these are shared structures like bitmaps and directories. They often get overwritten because you may be accessing multiple files and bitmap and so on. So instead of for every single change you immediately try to reflect into on the disk, you wait for some time, and so if it gets overwritten multiple times, you only update the final state. But how long to buffer will depend now, because we saw that for crucial, I think we missed something. For crucial transactions like database transactions and all those things, we will have some problem because if there is a power loss in between, you will be losing some crucial data. So they will have to use fsync and some other data system calls that are provided to make it more atomic and more immediate write through. Or you have to directly jump. Most of the database that bypass file systems, they have a direct interface to the files, to the disk, and they manage it without file system. So because they don't rely on OS, so they do it on their own. So that is one of the those are things. There are some topics. What my feeling is, I want to end this course at this point of time. There are some one topic at least I wanted to cover earlier. I was thinking in mind to discuss cache consistency, but still I feel that it's little an advanced topic. Most of the UG OS course don't cover it, and I've already covered most of the topics in quite a detail. And your syllabus for the exam is already now significant enough that we can test in 1.5 hours. So I just like any good or bad thing comes to an end. Hopefully I am feeling to end this course at this point of time and say you all the best. But yeah, if anybody of you are very eager to take one or more topics, I can do it next week. But most of the courses have, I think, finished the syllabus, so I also don't want to go on prolonging this. Some of the topics are interesting. If you are interested, you can read on the book. Yeah, they are simple enough. As you have already seen this book, the way of writing this book is very easy. You can understand on your own also. But syllabus, official point of view, I want to keep the syllabus till this point only. And I hope you had at least a reasonable experience. I know it will be a mixed experience because this class is a very varied class, 140 students and different things. And I try to do my best, but I don't know how was the experience for all of you. I try to go into a lot of details also on purpose, and I will be sending out a feedback form just like I have done it after mid-sem, maybe to get some more information about the next time I take this course. Anything anybody wants to say? Any question or any suggestion or any comment? So I already saw some people are saying they had a good experience and they are thanking. So it's glad, it is encouraging to me that at least some of you have found it a good experience, hopefully. So for more details, I will be sending again a feedback form. So probably a similar form like last time.